All right. UI versus UX. If you are not here for this talk, still welcome. Welcome. I'm really excited that you're all here with me, kind of grab some lunch and do a little knowledge sharing, so yay. Who am I? My name is Vianka Aloras. I am a UX researcher and designer. I originally am from Washington, D.C. I actually started my career as an interior architect, and I designed hospitality work. So I specialized in hotel and restaurant work. I did a lot of their interiors, but also a lot of kind of a brand and marketing package with that as well. And I got really interested in interaction with technology because that's something that's really coming around nowadays. And the last firm I worked with, when I was doing interiors, started an interaction group, and I was like, hey, I want to learn more about that. And so I shifted design gears or career into more UI UX, and here I am doing government contracting. Total opposite, but I think this presentation will kind of show how those two things kind of do help each other in terms of understanding people. So I am here now in Oklahoma for a big next generation project with the FAA. Shameless plug here, if you are interested in learning more about that project or any opportunities within that project, feel free to reach out. Or if you just have any questions, design questions, or want to talk about it, you can send me a message on LinkedIn or even on the Grams. I am an Instagram user, so there you go. What is our agenda today? We'll be learning a little bit about what UI is or what UX is, also why are they different. We will also be learning about common roles and practices for UI or UXers like myself. And this presentation may look very official or formal, but I do like to keep things casual. If you have any questions along the way or want to say anything about it, please, I love discussions. It actually makes me antsy if people are quiet. So let's keep the discussion going. All right. So we posted this image on our Meetup page. It looks something like this. We have one ketchup bottle labeled UX and another is labeled UI. Any thoughts on why they may be labeled this way? Yeah. Okay. But very pretty, very aesthetically pleasing. Mm-hmm. The one labeled UX is like plastic, always sits on the head, so the ketchup's always in the right spot, easy to squeeze out, easier for the user to use. Yeah, easier. Okay, sweet. Next time I'm gonna try to let you use the mic, but you're right on. The question is, any thoughts on why one bottle is labeled UX versus the other one is labeled UI? And do you want to just do a small summary of what you said? Sure, yeah. Sorry. No, it's my voice a little. For everyone that's on Techlahoma.
Sure, so I'm Alec Dans, if y'all don't know me. I was just saying, the bottle on the right looks like what you would normally see in like an old 50s diner or something, normally like a glass bottle. Harder to get the ketchup out of. You'll often see people like hitting their palm on the bottom or using a knife to get the ketchup to actually put on a sandwich. The one on the left, labeled UX, is a little bit easier to use, plastic bottle, not as aesthetically pleasing. But the ketchup is always in the right spot and it's easier to squeeze out because it's made out of plastic.
Thank you. So, yes, you are correct, but there's more. If we really had to truly label UX versus UI, it would look more something like this. See, the ketchup bottles have stayed true to themselves, like the look and feel. They still look red. You can still tell that they're ketchup bottles, one versus the other. Bottle number one, bottle number two. They're still ketchup. But really look at how Fred is experiencing these bottles. I call them Fred. See, for ketchup bottle number 1, Fred is like totally not having a good time. He is struggling with this ketchup bottle, just like you mentioned. He is banging on it, unable to get ketchup on the hot dog, everywhere else but the hot dog. Now, for bottle number 2, we have Fred being happy. He's delighted. He's so excited that he can actually get the ketchup on the hot dog. Now, again, we still have the UI, UX concept here, but we're gonna really focus on how the UI has to do with how it looks, and how the UX has to do with how people experience your product. Yes.
Interesting side note. I learned from a business class actually that the glass bottles has a little Heinz 57, has a little 57 on it. That 57 was originally put on by the bottle makers to show the proper place to hit it if you wanted the ketchup to come out, because hitting on the back creates suction, but if you hit it right where that is, it would actually increase the flow. But nobody knew what it was for. Like it was this design element that was added that nobody bothered to use because they didn't even realize that's what it was for. So.
That's a great example of how UI has failed. Because you have a 57 as a graphic, hey, if you touch here, maybe you'll have a better success with ketchup. But if it's not easily available for a user to see, or someone to just intuitively use it, then that's where the UI is failing. Like, it's not available for them to see that it's there for their use. But thank you for that example. It's a great example. Yeah, I did know that little secret, but again, it's tough if you don't see or know that 57 number is there. So what do these magical letters mean, really? Because people say UI, UX all the time. UI translates to user interface, and UX translates to user experience. No worries, we will get into these a little deeper, but do kind of think about how they both have user in their name. So user in their name, user interface and user experience. We're gonna dig a little deeper into user interface first. So there's this long definition up there, but simply put, user interface is anything any user may interact with, be it digital or a digital product or a service. So like you said about the 57, the 57 was meant to be put there on the bottle in order for someone to interact with, but and it's there, but it may not necessarily have been like easily accessible for people to see. And also another user interface, if we go back to the ketchup bottle, is that it still has the Heinz label on it. So aesthetically, it's still red, and you can tell that it's ketchup. So let's think of UI that way. But in order to understand UI a little bit more, we need to understand the history. In the 1970s, if you wanted to use any type of computer, you had to use the command line. And I don't know about you guys, I'm not a developer, but that must have been really tough if you weren't one. You really had to be able to program a language and had infinite type of code in order to complete very simple tasks for computers. It wasn't around until the 1980s that the first graphical user interface, the GUI, was developed by computer scientists at Xerox, where finally things like icons, buttons, menus, checkboxes were available for people to start using. And in 1984, that's when Apple released their first personal computer, and this really, revolutionized everything because this made it accessible for people to start using it. Anyone that didn't know how to use code could start looking at an interface or a screen and really interact with it. And also, Apple was the first one to come up with a mouse and a click option, so people didn't have to type in things. They could actually go through and click on things. Now, the lesson here is that if we didn't start thinking about what UI really looked like, then people will start being more like Fred with bottle number 1 and frustrated, or not being able to find a number 57. It just became clear that if people couldn't start interacting with computers more easily, that computers wouldn't sell. They just wouldn't sell at all. Or even devices. I mean, here we have a laptop, a tablet, even a Game Boy. If people weren't able to easily be able to view what they had to do or accomplish with these devices, they wouldn't sell as well. And therefore, UI or UI designers were born. So again, we have a lot of different types of devices. Even your Apple Watch has this. And even something like this, your smart TV. I mean, let's be real, I just really like because it's a GIF. It highlights things. But just think about this a little bit. Like, we all have interacted with TVs. Regardless of it being smart or not, we have this expectation that once we either click or press or even say play on a symbol or things that are highlighted, visually highlighted, and let's say that football game right there, we have this expectation that the next step that would happen for us is for it to play, right? So as users, we need these guides, these visual guides, in order for the steps to guide us through our experience. So UI are visual representations on how to guide your user through your product or your service. So what do some of these graphical user interface components look like today? And I am focusing on digital right now. This is a small example of a UI kit, what we call a UI kit, or also a UI component library, pattern library. There are a lot of names out there, but it's a UI kind of display of things, of pieces that you'd be using for your product. Here you find buttons, maybe colors, the headers and font sizes, font types, or even progress bars or input boxes. This is almost a map or a guide for your developers or your designers to have a more consistent experience or more consistent components throughout your product. Now, usually colors are super important because blue, green, and red are the ones that are most commonly used. Blue usually means action. When a user uses it, they know that they have to either, as a user, I must click and I will get, or I will do something. Something will happen if blue is around. With green, it usually signifies success, like, yay, I've accomplished something. As a user, I was able to have confirmation or get confirmation that I did something right. And for red is bad. We never want to use red when it's a success. Red is usually really bad, or not really bad, but invalid, or used for, as a user, I can't continue my path on this journey because there's something that I've done wrong. And so to take away with this is that colors, shapes, and letters do matter when creating a UI, and that this is a more digital approach of what UI means. And the pieces, these are the pieces that will start telling your story, or will help guide your story as we go. But what do I mean about story or experiences? Here we go, user experience. A little recap. So UI or user interface does determine the graphics and the visuals that we see or that we as users interact with on our devices. And as a result, it kind of needs us, or with user experience, we need that to back it up in order to be able to successfully guide users through your UI. I like to think of it as UI is what users see, and UX is how users feel. So if we think about the ketchup bottle again, UI is what users see, and UX is what users feel. So let's start defining UX a little bit more. Do we have any questions? I feel like I'm going really fast. No? Cool. So UX, or user-centered design, It means understanding what your users need, how they think, and how they behave, and incorporating that understanding into every aspect of your process. Jesse James Garrett, just like Don Norman, I mean, they're pretty well-known people in the game, in the UX field. It's really important, again, to remember that we have users in mind. We're all users, and we're all people. So to kind of be able to continue with the user experience profession, like we really need to start or empathizing with our users. This, I know, is a super broad definition. Every possible interaction a person could have with a product or service. I mean, yeah, any product. And it really does, if you remember what I said about my past career about interior design or interior architecture, I would like to think, and it actually encompasses a lot of user experience design, because we would have to consider how people would function or how businesses would function through a space. Now, there are actually some UX professionals that have started calling this field other names like customer experience or service design, or others have gone a step further and really just started calling it experience design. So here's why this UX thing really exists, I think. This is bad UX. So I don't know about you, but I would never want to park anywhere near these parking signs. I mean, there's where do I even park, or what do I do? You know, as a user, I'd feel like I'm already getting a ticket just looking at this. And this is an example of a bad user experience, because as a user, it's very difficult to read the signs. It doesn't have a clear UI. Therefore, it's unclear to what steps I should take as a result as to what's going to happen. I need to get to my kickball game. I'm not going to make it because I can't park. Or if I park, I'm risking my, getting a ticket or something, or getting towed. Now, as for the sidewalk example, even though there is a UI, if you think of it, like the sign, please use sidewalk, it's not doing a really good job of making people or guide people towards the sidewalk versus the actual patch of grass. People are going to do what makes them feel the best and the right thing to do, so they're going to walk away. I mean, can you guys think of bad UX so far? I'm sure there's a lot of examples out there. Anyone? Any examples? Okay. So here's another illustration of maybe how UX can help out. And this is an MRI device found at or an example of one found at, let's say, it's a children's hospital. To use it, children have to lay down and stay absolutely still for 7 minutes. I mean, again, I don't know about you guys, but I can barely do that too. 7 minutes, stay still. Can you imagine if a child had to kind of stay still in this 8-foot-tall machine thing? They probably feel more like this. So kids cry and scream and grab their parents, and most actually, unfortunately, need to be sedated, 80% of them, because in order to get a scan done, and that's a pretty high number. So here we obviously have a problem, an experience problem that we can kind of rethink and take a look at. So here, look, it's the same machine. Well, as adults, we see it that way, right? But the experience is totally different. This is good design or good UX. GE Adventures, the Adventures Innovation Group in Pittsburgh, teamed up with Children's Hospital, and they did a little research on how they could better help children, get better scans or lower the sedation rate. They were able to lower it by 5%. I mean, to us, it may not seem that significant, but it is a right way, the right direction. And it just gets really powerful feedback in terms of understanding how we could help people, and even if they're little, the children, have a better experience while they're either sick or have just a better experience overall in trying to get a diagnosis done. So they currently, when they go through this experience, the children actually start in another room. They put on their costumes, and even the parents can participate, and all the technicians and medical professionals can as well. And they tell them, hey, do you want to go on an adventure or a pirate ship adventure? And the kids can say, yay. So they go on this path, and they've even designed this whole thing on the floor and the walls, and just an overall experience that they go through in order to get this MRI scan done. So the goal of UX designers is to focus on the end user and to also be strong advocates for them every step of the way. So we may be asking ourselves, like, user experience is focused mainly on the user, correct? So why are there so many products out there that do have bad design or bad UX? Like, why do we have so many services out there on the market that don't quite get to this point? And the answer is, I mean, there could be many factors, but a lot of times is that people forget this part. They start just building all the way and really forget how people would go through their product, or they want to reduce expenses, or they really have this fear of doing the right thing or by upsetting their clients or business stakeholders. But really the number one reasons why UX could go wrong is that we prioritize the product rather than how a user will experience it. And we just need to be, what we really could take away from this is that we need to go about it with trying to make a product more easy to use, more useful for people, and also more delightful in order to be more empathetic towards those that will be using your product. Now, how do we find these better experiences or outcomes for users? And I like this diagram because as you can see UX in the middle, it really encompasses all of these things like technology. We did talk about the user's needs, but we also need to consider business goals. And if I go back to the hospital experience example, we did talk a lot about the kids' experiences, but we also need to consider the medical professionals' experiences as well in order for them to do their job. That is a business goal, because the hospitals need to be able to do their job in order to diagnose the patients. These are all considerations and requirements that need to be taken into account when creating these experiences or these products. So we think about it like, yes, we have the users that we keep in mind, but we also have to keep the business goals in mind as well. And also any technology constraints that we may have. Well, the MRI, it was a ginormous piece of equipment, sure, but we do need to consider when it comes to like any products that we may be building, like what technologies constraints are there. So the beauty of it is that UX takes into consideration all these three things, even more, but puts them together, and that's kind of what creates the experience. I also am showing a diagram here of, there's a company called Adaptive Path. They've actually been acquired by Capital One, but they created this framework that allows for you to do some user research and create what is called an experience map. And this kind of allows for your team to learn more about the user. And you can observe everything that the person may be experiencing while they interact with your product. So here in this case, the user is going through trying to get cash out of an ATM. So things that they notate is how is this lady feeling while they are trying to get cash out? What are they listening? How are they grabbing their bag? What are they doing? What are they thinking? Do they need larger fonts because they may have some visual impairments? So all these things to take into consideration when you are trying to learn more about your user, this is a great tool to do or to use. It's kind of to start mapping what that journey looks like for your user. So let's bring it all together and see some keywords that describe UX and some that describe UI. On the UX side, we have words like accessible, useful, and convenient. On the UI side, we have words like typography, buttons, images. These give actually a pretty good overview of understanding one versus the other. It's really, I don't like to think that they're versus each other. You really need them together to be cohesive. But it is a good reminder of, again, UI is what people see or users see, just like those buttons and typography. And UX is how people feel. Do we have any questions so far or about these words? None? Cool. So let's put our new knowledge to practice and determine if we really know what we're looking at. Here's a site that I think we're all familiar with. What are some of the UI elements on this screen? He said Google logo and search bar. Okay. Microphone icon. Google search, and I feel lucky. And I think those are our two buttons, but they're kind of light on the screen. Yes, correct. They're all things that we can visually see, right? Is there anything else that you guys see? White space, yes. Simplicity, white space. Actually, that's very important. It is still part of your screen real estate. It is white space, right? Awesome. So how about on the UX side? And I purposely created this to be static because I wanted to see the UI, but I want you to think a little bit of what the UX side of things are without me really interacting with it. Can you think of anything that we would consider UX? Yes. Primary function is there in your face. Yes. To search, right? Yes. Yep. That's great. That's one of my examples. I'm excited you said that. Yeah, so the cursor, the line there, it's almost an indicator, a small indicator that blinks. That's a great experience for people to kind of know that this is where I need to click or this is where I can start typing. Go ahead. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So Doji says the autocomplete or even auto suggestions. So when you start saying, I don't know, typing cat, it starts automatically giving you examples or suggestions of what you can start searching for. So it's almost like a little cue of what the user can do or look at next. It also, with the auto suggest, it highlights that list or things that you've previously seen in a different color. So you have new ones and also previously seen searches on that same list. So those are all experiences that kind of bring this to life and do allow the user to successfully go through a search. Do we have any other thoughts on UX? Yeah.
Presumably this is an interface, presumably there is a person, potentially more, using this to accomplish some goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that goal is up there in their head, and they're trying to, and it's expressed through whatever they're going to enter into, presumably, and into the search bar. So it's that relationship between the expression of the goal and that you can't see as well.
Absolutely. So great that you said that. It's something we can't see, right? It is that goal that a user has when interacting with this screen is that they want to search something or they have a question, right? Or they just want an answer. There you go. They just want an answer and they come to this screen, right? Yeah. That is a user consideration. Right. They want to do the research. Yeah. And actually, that's a good point, too, that they have the ability to continue that thought or that question. It doesn't necessarily stop them there, right? This guides them to being able to go and be more curious and just continue with their thought. So this UI does do a good job, and or UX-wise, does a good job in kind of allowing that to happen. Awesome. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Right. And one thing is actually I haven't gone to the Google page for a while. I use Chrome, so I think the best UX that happened there is that you automatically can use the browser line as a search bar. I mean, I really only go to Google to go see their doodles, their animations, and like see if there are any games there. But yeah, you're right. Like, I think it depends on the users, right? If they go about their search or their question through their browser bar or here even this page, or even if they use the icons that are available to them with the like the YouTube that you mentioned or the different sites that are that the user is accustomed to going to or having easy access to. Yeah, I did crop it out because actually I just wanted to focus on the search bar. But yeah, you are totally correct. Thank you. So here's another one. I think it's another one we're all familiar with. It is, can anyone tell me which one? What site it is? YouTube. Sweet. So what are some UI elements on this screen? Lots of what? Lots of video thumbnails. Awesome. Lots of buttons. Navigation. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's also logo recognition, even though the logo is super small, you can still see, but also the white space and simplicity of it really allows for you to focus on the content. There's also this red button on the bottom that I had no idea, I had no idea what it was for, but it's to subscribe, and it seems very like specific and like very, even though each one of these images does represent almost a button, what we would consider a button to play. I thought it was interesting that they have one red button. Really draws your attention to it, to subscribe. I didn't know what I was subscribing to, but you're subscribing to something. And that might be their goal, right? Their business goal. Now, can we identify different UX things or elements that we go through when experiencing this page? Do, okay, sure, yeah. Any? Yeah, that could be an indication, right, that there are more viewers than those that produce. I don't know. That's maybe a YouTube question we should ask. But yeah, it's yeah. A lot of the icons on top do help like profiles or people to know who if I'm on my page. Do you have any questions?
I was just saying, you know, like really, he's mentioning the content creators. I think that the YouTube interface, whenever you're watching a video, is amazing. It's
Hmm.
so great. But like these kind of pages, I think they're pretty terrible. Quite honestly, like, like right there, you're able to see history, but on my phone, it's a nightmare for me to find my YouTube history. I
Hmm.
can't find it. I
Yeah.
always have to remember when I hit the folder, and that takes me to my profile. Or like, if I'm figuring out like if you have like watch lists, like if you have stuff saved, like there's three different ways to have something saved. You can subscribe or like or create a playlist. And they
Hmm.
all do basically the same thing. I can never figure out like which one I'm supposed to do, which one I did. And then some interfaces make it easier to do one, and some make it easier to do another. It's actually, I mean, for Google standards, I think their YouTube page is pretty terrible.
You
Oh yeah, definitely.
just to see it. Wow, that's fast.
And that's I have two users, so like if I'm logged in my company user, then I'll look at that
Oh.
user. Oh,
This sounds like Fred bottle number one. Like trying to bad UX. Oh, we have 5 minutes, so we gotta go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I want to kind of go back to something he said because at least in our shop, we have a very definitive separation between consumers and producers. The people who create things, the user interface for them doesn't need to naturally flow, but it needs to be easy for them to make the changes that they need. That if you do coding, right? The best text editor on the planet is Vim, but
Mm.
no one in their right mind would teach anyone.
Disagree.
I mean, yeah, you can disagree, but I mean, it's or like Photoshop. No one in their right mind thinks Photoshop is intuitive to use. But when you're a creator, the boundary isn't does things are things obvious. Are they easy to get to that I need to interact with them? Are they placed and sit? So your user experience is different because the way you're using is different. We consciously keep those things separate. When we've got a consumer, the consumer standards are they need to be able to interact with it with a minimal amount
Of constraint.
understanding.
Right.
Where with the producer, when somebody who's actually producing product, the usability consideration is access to the tools and the right tools being in front of them at the right times, not necessarily a simplicity of design. So
people that want to watch that music video, it's great. It'll send them their cheesy emails. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like where's my video? Yeah. It I guess to everyone's point is that it really you need to find who your target audience is, who your target user is, and really start driving that experience towards those people or those users. So you need to keep in mind what their goal is. Like you said, some people Photoshop wise are experts, and I would consider them super users, as opposed to someone who's just learning how they need to still get a feel for what is available to them or not. And right, and right, or and in a way you can guide them to kind of do that onboarding part of you have bots now that kind of give you hey, here's a little tutorial. And I don't know about you guys, but when I start encountering a new product, I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna figure it out myself. And there are some users who do that, who are a little bit more confident in that way. But it's still important. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's important to understand who is it that you're providing this product for. I do have a quick example of a non-digital version. I mean, I would ask what UIs you see, but I'm just going to state them. We see, yellow surface, some texture in there that almost can be considered like buttons, and a crosswalk or what looks like a crosswalk. Some of the UX things that I would consider here is that texture does allow for people who are blind or visually impaired to have a grounds, or once they come across it, they experience how, okay, I need to stop. So it's a nice guide as to when to stop before they cross the street. Also, for those of us who walk across streets, crosswalks are a great indicator or experience in being able to not only give us a path to cross the street, but also for drivers to see that when they're driving, to see that could possibly be a pedestrian there. Just wanted to show this example because we know that we can apply UX and UI, especially UX, beyond the digital world, and just things to consider. And I'm going to try to go as quick as I can. UX and UI roles, huge list. And really, this could be endless. Again, going back to the UX world, it could be a customer experience, service design, all these things. But these are commonly used roles or names for people in the digital world. And truth is that someone could have a combination of all these skills, but it could also be that some are more expertise in one versus the other. Do you guys have any questions about this one? I'll just step into what each one is. So UX researcher, and I did put what I would consider like role-wise, like UX researcher or UX designer can do this type of work, in which they are considering doing that research behind the product, understanding that target audience, or understanding that target user, kind of building or scoping that narrative in order to start producing that story behind that experience. So analyzing business requirements, also being able to map out the steps and every step of the way your product is being used for people. And they can start, deliverables that are seen in this are more like personas or mind mapping or experience maps. And here are examples of people testing through product, and also maybe like little animations or caricatures for personas. So if personas by I mean, and we can have a whole talk about personas, they are kind of characters that you start creating through all the research that you find, that once you start building a product, you can say, hey, like Fred feels this way when interacting with ketchup, or Fred needs to do this. As a user, we need to accomplish X. So personas are a very helpful tool for the entire team to keep in mind when creating experiences or a product. Interaction design. So for these roles, I think it's more of UI, UX designers and product designers. I mean, researchers do feed a lot of their narrative or a lot of the work that they've found in order to start accomplishing these interactions. So interaction design starts focusing on the actual usability of the product. So laying out different components or ways that a person will interact with your screen. You did mention earlier about YouTube on computer versus your phone. I mean, there are a lot of considerations to take when what type of device will a user be using. Here, I do have, if you notice, it's grayscale. So everything's super low fidelity at this point. You really are trying to focus on trying to visually start representing what those steps that the research has given you in order to start building this product. Interface design, again, still I think UI, UX designers and our product designers. Interface design is starting to take what you've created wireframe-wise or that grayscale, lower fidelity screens to start looking more like your real product. I think you're still in your prototyping phase at this point, but this really does allow for you or your users to start really having that look and feel of your product, your brand, and also overall how they will be starting to interact with your product. This, you totally want to be more on like high fidelity type prototypes. And for visual design, which all of these kind of like blend in a little bit sometimes. We have product designers or visual designers kind of in this role. And visual design, like, take those really high fidelity prototypes and just like beef them up. They really take your brand into consideration, just the aesthetic of it, like how you want to really portray or move your product forward. They it's also all about the first impression that counts a lot with users. Like your product is not approachable or doesn't feel like the right thing, I mean, you wouldn't want like Comic Sans on a funeral home site, like, or anything like that. So they really do take into consideration like the typography and how those like, just the visuals, how those really help guide what you're trying to sell or what your product is trying to portray. And some of the tools that I have here listed for prototyping tools, and there are so many out there. These are just some that I've used before. Kind of when there's a steep learning curve, or those that can provide higher fidelity ones or lower fidelity wireframes. So these are great tools. I think Figma has been pretty cool with helping teams that use Mac versus PCs versus anyone. It's web-based, so anyone can really collaborate together, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm a sketch person myself, but that is Mac. But yeah, these are very helpful tools in order to start creating more of those high-fidelity prototypes. The idea is that really whatever works for your team, use it, but as long as that you are creating rapid prototyping that you can test as soon as possible and get it out there to get feedback from, that's the goal of it, right? But really the end goal of the whole team should be to have happy end users. And as you can see here, I have like a bunch of the rules and words that we've used today to kind of create this happy user or happy end user experience. So back to Fred, yay. Now I think we all understand a little bit more of how maybe ketchup bottle number 2 is a little bit easier and why the user experience is a little better for that one. And again, going back to UI, how if you think about it, their visual design or just the aesthetics of it, we can tell it's ketchup. And experience-wise, we can tell which one's easier to use or not. So to sum it all up, UI could change, but it doesn't drastically change as much. Like you can still tell Google's Google, YouTube's YouTube, right? Brands don't. It takes a lot for brands to change, but there are some gradual changes as time goes by. UX-wise is kind of like never-ending, though. UX is something that you kind of want to continue to improve and innovate and get more feedback. I mean, I think YouTube should get more of your feedback in terms of like mobile to computer or vice versa, or whenever, have all those pain points in mind and start creating better experiences through that. I did include IA here, and I know we didn't discuss this, but this is something, IA, which stands for Information Architecture. I do believe it's the bones of a product, so we can discuss this in another talk. But Halloween-wise, I thought it was cool visual, like how UX is, the life of a product, and it gives you like circulation, and it's a story. How UI is the skin of a product, and IA could be considered the bones. And just a quick thing that we did not discuss, but is something crucial to our whole process, is the design thinking process. And just as long as that we keep in mind how to empathize with our users, and then narrowing that scope and defining exactly what it is that we want to provide to our users, create ideas, and also start creating prototypes, testing that immediately, and just getting that product out and going. So it's an endless cycle. So yeah. Thank you. Happy Halloween. And I know we're like way over time, but if you have any questions or you'd like to discuss anything, feel free to reach out or let me know. And thank you for joining us.